We're back with Joe Madison, the Black Eagle. They have Joe Madison, the Black Eagle, on Sirius XM Urban View weekdays, 6 to 10 a.m., Sirius XM channel 110, joemadison.net, the website. You can tweet at Madison Sirius XM, SIRIUS XM. And, Joe, we were talking about actually, let's get back to the videos for just a moment.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking before we went on the air. When I was a kid, I used to read these Raymond Chandler novels. Raymond Chandler was back in the 1930s. He wrote it wasn't Sam Spade. It was one of those famous detectives from the 30s. I forget the guy's name. And just about every novel, or at least every other story, he'd go into the quote colored part of town with some police, and they just beat the crap out of people for fun. Not him, but the cops. He was just basically documenting what the cops were up to. And this is nothing new. It's just that now, even 10 years ago, people might have had a phone, but they didn't have a video camera in their hand. And now everybody's got a video camera, and it's changing at least how aware people who are not people of color are of the situation that people of color.
Exactly. We were talking about. I was telling you one of the things we played was an old Richard Pryor skit where he does this joke in Richard Pryor style, which we can't do on your show. But he talks about, makes a joke about how he is stopped and he has to put up his hands and tells the policeman, "Look, I am reaching for my driver's license because I don't want to be a accident."
Right.
Because in those days when you got shot or you got beat, it was an accident. That's what they would go to the prosecutor with. That's what they would go to the courts with. And this also speaks to the fact that the prosecutors and the police often worked hand in hand. So a poor African American who probably didn't have any real great legal representation didn't stand a chance in court because it's your word against a sworn police officer. So you didn't stand a chance with the prosecutor. You didn't stand a chance with the courts. You didn't have the Johnny Cochrans of the world, or the Crumps that we have now. The key is that we've got two things going for us: technology, and you said it. One, and I said this when they had this campaign of put your hands up. This is a campaign that got started. I said, yeah, put your hands up, but keep your iPhone in your hand.
There you go.
And so that's number one. Number two is also the internet. So now when it happens, we almost instantaneously we see it, and people get to see for themselves what these policemen are doing. What's so crazy is how dumb some of these cops are. They, in some cases, know they're being videotaped. Take the police officer in New York who took $1,000 from a guy. He apparently had $1,000. This was in New York. $1,000 he had pulled out of the bank because he was going to buy a present for his girlfriend, who was with him. Then the policeman, did you see that video?
I did, yeah.
And the policeman starts beating him
grabs
up,
money, sticks it in his pocket.
And sticks it in his pocket and knows that the girlfriend is videotaping him.
Right.
Then he pepper sprays the guy who he took the money from and then turns around and pepper sprays this. But what I hope we all understand is that this cannot just be a black versus white issue. There are black police officers that sometimes, and in the days you're talking about, if the first black police officer, because I used to hear old timers say this, the first black police officer in Boston, the first black police officer where I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, or in Detroit, had to be tougher on the black community than the white cops to prove their worth. Yeah. And ironically, Tom, and history proves me out on this, these same black officers could not issue a ticket or arrest a white citizen unless a white policeman was present.
In a much smaller way, there was a variation on that in the 1870s to the 1890s with the Irish cops in Boston.
Yes.
And, this was Well, it was in some ways very similar.
Very similar. That's right.
In fact, the mythology, there was a whole book written about the Irish gene and how the Irish were predisposed to crime, which is why they ended up in Australia.
That's exactly right.
And so you had to get these brutal Irish cops who were the only ones who were capable of holding down the criminal Irish neighborhoods, right? And I mean, it's just like these racist stories.
Yeah, well, Michelle Alexander has, again, a great book. It's been out for several years now, called The New Jim Crow. Right. And, I wish people who quote it would read it. Mm. It's well worth reading it, but she goes into the history that goes back, and people hate to bring up slavery, but the reality is that this attitude towards the criminalization of African Americans goes back to slavery. I mean, we talk about the Fugitive Slave Act. Yeah. Same thing. What was the Fugitive Slave Act? A free person could literally be snatched off the streets of Washington, D.C., a free African American, by anybody, and then turned over to the authorities, and they had no recourse, and they could be sent right back into slavery. Or you could escape. These were considered criminal activities, escaping. Doug Blackman, who's written a fascinating book, talks about how African Americans, particularly in the South, if they didn't have a job, could be arrested. Wow. in certain southern cities because they would be, because they could literally be snatched off the street because they were standing on a street corner. Right. And if asked, well, what are you doing? Well, I'm sorry, I don't have a job. I'm just standing. They could be arrested.
Loitering crime.
Yes, be arrested for it.
Joe Madison with us. We'll be taking your calls and continuing this conversation right after this. It's 28 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Joe Madison, the Black Eagle on Sirius XM Urban View, weekdays 6 to 10 a.m., Monday through Friday, every morning on Sirius XM Channel 110. Check out his website, joemadison.net. We'll be right back.